So let us discuss an interesting question on how do people occupy houses in a locality. So assume you had a few houses and you were to choose a house for yourself. What kind of house will you like living in? Don't you think who your neighbors are matters to some extent? Would you like to be in a locality where your neighbors are someone with whom you cannot have a conversation, or your neighborhood is full of people who are unlike you? Would you like staying in such a locality? Now, here is an observation made several times in the literature. The observation is people are known to go and occupy a place, a locality or a city uniformly at random, but with time they sort of start segregating. By segregating, I mean they all get together. You will see clusters of different types of people. Here is a type of people, let's call it type green. They all are together. They all are together. And there is this type red as well. They all are together too. There you can see the clustering happening here. They wish to stay with each other. People have observed why exactly this happens. As I told you, this is not observed initially. Initially, they come and occupy the place uniformly at random. But with time, you see this kind of segregation that I am showing here. They get segregated into different classes. So assume in the United States, you will see a lot of Indians, Chinese and people from other countries. But you will see that Indians tend to sort of stay with each other in colonies, and there will be colonies of Chinese as well. Although there will be some sort of mingling, but there are places where you will see only people of one type. Okay, this is observed in many places. So assume you were to live in a foreign country or even in your own country. Would you not like to live in a place where you are surrounded by people who are of your type? Now, this is observed, and let us assume you are surrounded by people who are not like you. It is observed that people then they tend to migrate. This is you. And you are surrounded by people who are unlike you. What will happen? Nobody would like to stay in such a place. Would you like to stay in such a place? Absolutely not. Mostly not. But then, would you not prefer to stay where your type of people are present? Right? So, people who are around you are all like you. Anybody would like to stay in such a place. Not just this, in fact, at least some of them should be like you. Right? At least some of them should be like you. For example, you are here and you are surrounded by at least some 3 people who are like you, and the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people are not like you. You wouldn't care much. So let us call this the threshold value t equals 3, which means whenever, take a pause and understand what I'm saying. This is a very important concept in this lecture. Whenever you are surrounded by at least t number of people out of 8 people who can surround you in a neighborhood, 3 behind, 3 in the front and 2 people on the sideways, let's say. At least when you have t number of people who are like you, then you will stay there. If you are not surrounded by people, at least t people who are like you, then you will migrate. Here are 3 people who are like me, and my threshold is actually 3. So I like living in such a neighborhood. So it is believed that unhappy people change their house to a happier destination. By unhappy people, I mean people who are surrounded by less than t number of people. In the previous case, you saw t was 3, which means this fellow was happy. If in case this particular thing, instead of being green, was red, then he would be unhappy because his neighbors would be less than 3. Okay. Can we model this is the question. Can this be modeled? Can we model and see what exactly happens when people are unhappy and they migrate? They come and occupy a place uniformly at random, a house uniformly at random in a city, and then later they realize that because of the neighborhood they want to move to some other place. How do we model this? There's a very popular model called the scaling model. It's a very interesting model, a very simple and straightforward simulation. It goes like this. We assume that a grid simulates a city. A grid is an analog to a city, and we simulate the behavior of people. How do we do that? We take a grid like this, and then we put a into for one parity, that is, let's say, type green, and then O for a red parity, type red. Okay, so this particular person X is surrounded by the 4 red people and 4 green people. As I told you, if the threshold is 3, then this green fellow is actually happy. Okay. Now, let us take a look at an online simulation of the Skelling's model. What does Skelling's model say? Skelling's model simply says that as and when people are unhappy because they are surrounded by neighbors below their threshold value. What do I mean by that? Sounds a little jargonic. All I'm trying to say is my threshold is 3 or maybe 2. If I have 2 people in my neighborhood who are of my type, I will stay there. Otherwise, I will move. Let me take a big grid and then try simulating this and seeing. Let us see what one can observe. There are a lot of online simulations of this model. I'm just going to open a browser right now and then I'm going to show you one such simulation.